Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. Well, this giant guy, I suppose. The Giantmouse GM3. So Giantmouse Knives is an interesting company. It's a collaboration with an American guy, an Italian factory, and then Jesper Voxnaes and Jens Ansu. And they are, Jesper Vox and Ansu are, high-end designers with a lot of credibility and whatnot. And they're making these limited edition knives through Giantmouse. I reviewed the GM1, which was an incredible knife. The GM2, which was okay. It had a lot of good, but it had a lot of bad, and it was let down by the factory. And so now I'm back with the GM3 here. One thing to comment, though, this is not the GMP3. The P-series of Pirate, for some freaking reason, had a bronze scale on there, which is neat but heavy and just didn't super appeal to me. But this is the regular titanium version there, even though it's got the bronze accents, which used to mean pirate, but now doesn't, I guess. But anyways, so let's do a size comparison real quick. Right here is your Spyderco Delica. So you can see this is not a big knife whatsoever. Right here is your Ontario Rat number 2 and your Rat number 1. So again, it's kind of in that intermediate size range there. And anything else? Yeah, sure, the Benchmade 940. In a lot of ways, there's similarity in size between these two knives. So, yeah, there you go. Let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of your Giantmouse GM3. First off, I gotta say, I'm actually kind of impressed with Giantmouse as a company. Last time in my run-up to the GM2 review, I noticed that their warranty was terrible. And so I talked to the Giantmouse people, and they made their warranty no longer terrible. Look, that's the kind of customer-friendly sorts of attitude that I love to see in a knife-making company that impresses me and that, brought me a lot of joy, and so I gotta give credit where due. The Giantmouse folks, or well, I guess Guy, has impressed me, and so that does bring me some joy. Next thing about the knife itself, the design on this guy is actually great in a lot of ways. I mean, there is so much to love here. There are a lot of good details to it. I mean, the lock bar has a beautiful little bit of engraving that you saw in the disassembly video, and it's nicely done overall with rounded chamfered jimping here. And you've got a nice little cover up here for the lock bar, so it slides in there very precisely. That's good. The blade grind on the whole, I like this kind of pad where it's got a pretty quick plunge, but then it comes around. That's very, very nice. The jimping on here and then back again here matching is nice, and it's sort of become a hallmark of the Giantmouse line, at least in my eyes, and it works just fine. It's got a very nice backspacer, a very nice lanyard hole. I mean, seriously, if you're going to do a lanyard hole, this is a great way to go about it, because it just doesn't hurt a damn thing. It's great. And you got a nice landing zone for the finger when you use the flipper tab. This little chamfered area here. I mean, there is a lot of good in this design. The details are freaking everywhere, and I appreciate that very, very much. So that's nice. Next thing, this is a numbered edition. This little guy here is 030. So if you ever end up with 030, then you know where it came from. At least originally. So that's nice. Next thing, the clip on this guy is very nice as well. It's, I believe, the same clip from the GM1 and GM2, which no problem, was a good clip there too. But it's got plenty of ramp, plenty of spring, no real complaints with it there. And ergonomically speaking, it works well because it's got a nice big flat top, so it's not really a hot spot so much as something to fill the hand. So I love the clip on this guy. Actually, speaking of ergonomics, this is nice. It feels pretty damn good in the hand. It's a small knife, but because of the wider clip, it fills it nicely. There's a lot to love here. One thing I will highlight, though, is that this isn't really a finger choil here. You can think about this as a big sharpening choil, but even with my very small fingers, this is a questionable proposition. To choke up this far, I can do it, but I don't love it. I'd rather sit back here. So keep that one in mind. Next thing, I gotta say, I love the flipper tab on this guy because it is very low profile and the jimping is very nice. It's very strong, and you can see it's angled well. So it grabs the finger very effectively, but it's not going to be chewing on whatever's in your pocket here. And there's crowning everywhere on it. The backside of the flipper tab is nicely rounded off. The top of the blade is nicely rounded off. They've done a really good job making this pretty nice in the pocket, with one exception that we'll talk about later. But this is a great non-hostile flipper tab, and this didn't bother me at all. It's not going to attack your phone, your wallet, whatever. Not much of a pocket packer here, and I love that very, very much. Next thing I love is the blade. It's got great steel, M390, which is, if not the best steel, one of the best steels is out there right now for pocket knives. Has a great sharpening choil, and it just cuts very nicely. It's pretty thin behind the edge. It is a well-done knife on the whole. That's great. So I love this blade, and it worked very well for me in a variety of situations. Carried this guy a fair amount, actually more than I usually do for reviews, and honestly, it did impress me pretty thoroughly, so that's nice. Next thing is the action. The action on this guy is great, particularly once I took it apart and did a little bit of tuning on it and got rid of some of the factory gunk. It is just a great action. There is no concern about the action whatsoever. It's not completely drop-shotty, but you know what, whatever. Not a huge deal. I love the action on this guy. And then finally, fit and finish on this guy is excellent. There is only one fit and finish issue, and that's that the blade is ever so slightly off-center, but it's not to the extent where I'm sure that it's real. Like, only by looking at it relative to the peak of the thing, I don't care. So the fit and finish on this guy is really good. And after the GM2 having some issues in that regard, this was a very nice, welcome return home, so to speak, for Giantmouse. And so, to me, that's what's good about this guy, is that the fit and finish is damn near perfect. The action is great. The blade is great. It's got a very nice low-profile flipper tab, which I loved. The ergos are good. The clip is good. It's got some design language from the last two knives, which I kind of highlighted a little bit, like the clip, the collars, some of the jimping. It's a numbered edition, and then it's a great design with some excellent details that I pointed out. I'll probably spot more of them afterwards. I mean, seriously, look at the rounding on the back. Anyways, so that to me is what's good. Let's talk about what's great here. To me, what's great about the GM3 here is the size. This is a very nice, smaller knife, and it's small in a couple of dimensions. I mean, to start with, it's pretty thin. If we compare it to the Delica, which is already a pretty thin knife, I mean, you can see here that it's just about the same thickness. Maybe slightly chubbier, I'm not really sure. It's also relatively lightweight. I mean, the Delica is super light because it's plastic. Damn it, why am I in grams? Here we go. Ounces. Sorry, metric folks. 2.3 ounces on the Delica versus 3.2 on this guy, but you're still around that 1 ounce per inch guideline, so, you know, it works out pretty well. It's just great in the pocket, too, because if you look at the size of it overall, thinness-wise, this guy is thinner than the Delica. Which again is kind of a high watermark for that. And it's smaller than the Benchmade 940, which is another really easy to carry sort of knife. Not strongly so, but it is. Maybe a little bit thicker. But either way, this is one of those knives that is small enough that it absolutely disappears in the pocket. And then given the fact that the clip's got a little cant, this is beautifully designed for carry. And then on top of it all, it's not so big. I mean, when I first looked at this guy, if it were any bigger, it would be a little bit weird, a little murdery. But honestly, at 3.25 inches, it's not bad at all. And the nail nick does help to kind of knock some of that down. So look, I just love what they were going for here. They've made something that is, you know, very convincingly a Giantmouse knife, but they've made it small and svelte and gentlemanly, and I think that was great. And so that, to me, is absolutely what's great. It's a pleasure to carry at a very nice size, and it's hitting that gentlemanly note, I think, pretty well. So let's talk about what's bad here. Okay, so on the bad side, first off, a lot of people have made comments about the price of this knife, but the thing is, that honestly just doesn't bug me, because think about it here. For $325, you're getting a knife that is all titanium, that's got M390 steel, which is the top of the line. It is a limited edition knife with, 300 or something of them made, with two big name designers, and very good fit and finish. Sure, you can get better value some other places, but for what this is, I don't have a problem with the price particularly. And $10 of that's going to charity, which, okay, whatever. Sure. So, I mean, it's high, absolutely 100%, but, $325 is a lot to spend on any pocket knife, but I don't feel like I'm being ripped off really at all here. I think that the price is not a problem with this knife here. But the knife does have some other problems. One of them is the nail nick. So a lot of people probably were betting on me calling this one ugly, but the thing is, I gotta be... Well, not objective. I can never be objective. But I gotta be honest here. I mean, I hate the nail nick personally with the fire of 1,000 burning suns. I really dislike this. Because it collects crud as you're cutting with it. It snags on things. It wins you absolutely nothing. Because you can two-hand open this knife absolutely without it if there's ever a concern. And, it doesn't make any freaking sense to me. That said, for every 2 people who hate it, based on my experience in the YouTube comments as well as on Instagram, at least one person's in love with it. And so, it does separate this knife a little bit from the pack. And so I'm not going to lie and say that, yeah, nail nick's fine, good to go. But the thing is, the functional issues it causes are relatively small. They're thinking outside the box. It is a matter of taste, and it is something that's different. And so often, what I want out of the knife world is something new and different. So even though I don't think this works particularly well here, and I think the knife would be better off without it, I can't get too bent out of shape with it, so I'm going to call it bad, not ugly. Next thing on the bad side, and this isn't terrible, is that it is a much better knife after the clean out. When I got this guy from the factory, it was running a lot more slowly. It just clearly wasn't doing so hot. The factory assembler just didn't do a great job of it, but it got a lot better after that, so you may need to do that. And then finally, I do miss the blue accents. This knife would be way more compelling to me with the blue accents from the previous Giantmouse GM1 and GM2 rather than the bronze from the GMP series previously. I don't get that they've now switched those two things around. I really don't understand that, because I feel like they threw away some branding clarity. Blue means GM, GM3, and bronze means GMP. I don't get it. But whatever it is, I miss it here. I think the knife would be a lot more attractive and, frankly, a little bit more interesting and gentlemanly with it. So, but that's the bad to me, is that I miss the blue accents here. This was a lot better after a clean out. The nail nick drives me personally nuts, but it is outside the box thinking, and there are a lot of people who seem to love it, so I'll stick to bad on it. And then the price is absolutely a wash for me. I think it's a fine price. I'm not super concerned about that. Let's talk about what's ugly, because I am super concerned about that. Okay, so on the ugly side, first off, the liner lock on this guy is a little hard to get at. What I mean by that is if you take a look here, you can see that the liner lock is, the liner that is entirely recessed within the scales. That you kind of need to be looking down into it in order to see it. And what this means is that the process of opening this knife is not like most liner locks where you kind of just grab and you put your thumb against the liner and then push. Instead, what you do is you just jam your thumb in here in this general direction and hope that it unlocks the knife. I do not have huge thumbs, and I find this to be kind of awkward, and I don't love it. It feels just non-graceful. And you can tell that they kind of tried. I mean, they made a big scallop on the side here, but it's just not quite enough. What they needed to do is just knock this down a little bit more, and then, it'd be okay. This thing is not a big problem, but it's one of those little problems that adds up. Every damn time you close this knife, there's kind of a thing over to the side there that just makes me feel like, okay, when I go back to a liner lock that's doing it right, it's a lot nicer. And so, to me, that is absolutely 100% ugly, and it does add up over time. The other issue is that there is just too much damn blade for this handle, or too little handle for this blade. Either way, and that comes in two fronts. First off, the tip of the blade is very, very close to the top of the knife. You can see here that there's a little bit of backspacer here trying to protect it, and then there's a little bit of an uptick here, but there's not nearly enough. This needed to go up a little bit higher in order to shield the tip of this knife, because this means that if there's even a little bit of pressure on the flipper tab there, even if there's a little bit, it's coming even closer, and even just in its resting state, if I drag my finger along the top there, I can very much feel the tip of the blade, and I can catch fabric on there very easily. So that's way too cutting it close there. But even worse is on the back side here. You can see that when this knife is closed, and it's hard to get the reflections just right, but when this knife is closed, the tip of the knife is very, I'm sorry, not the tip, but the heel of the blade is very, very close to the edge, to the extent where if I just run my finger along the back, I feel the blade in there, and I'm very reluctant to do that because I don't want to cut my finger open. And I am so damn tired of this as an issue, because it is really disappointingly common, but it is like a violation of the number one damn thing that a folding knife shouldn't do, which is cut you when it's not open. And so flow-through knife designs are fine, but you need to be very, very careful that you have either enough handle that it's safe or not enough blade that it's pushing it. This to me is an outright design flaw. They needed to either just cut down the vertical height of the blade a little bit, which would have been just fine. They just knocked this down maybe, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch. We would have been much safer. Or use a little bit more handle. And you can tell they tried to manage it a little bit by kind of putting the sharpening choil this far out. Maybe they've gone a little further, you'd get a finger choil out of it too. But either way, it's not great. Maybe if your fingers are much bigger than mine, you won't care, but this left me always a little bit unsure about this guy in the pocket, because particularly with the pinky finger, as I slide my hand in to get my wallet or something, That's scary to me. I don't like that whatsoever, and it leaves me really reluctant to sharpen the blade down here. Because I like my knives scary sharp, but I won't want this knife scary sharp because the tip is a little pokey, and this guy is too. And so that is just ugly to me, is that they have violated a major, major thing. A folding knife should be safe when folded, and they didn't quite pull that off. So, to me, that is just deeply 100% ugly. That the blade can cut you when the knife is closed, the tip is so snaggy, and that the liner lock is a little hard to get at. Let's talk final conclusions, though. Look, final conclusion, this is a great knife. I mean, absolutely. Beautiful design, great details, great blade, great steel, great size, and it's absolutely redemption after a pretty disappointingly made GM2. This shows me that Giantmouse has still got it, and it puts the GM4 right back on my table. I will be looking at that 100%. And at some level, I really do like the knife. I love what it's going for here, and it was a pleasure to carry. But it then has those two big flaws, the two Achilles heels, so to speak. The liner lock is a pain to use, and the blade is just too big in the handle to be safe. And so this is a knife that hopes that you've got huge fingers so you can't cut yourself on the blade, but tiny thumbs so you can get into the liner lock, and that just doesn't tend to happen. Both of these things are fixable with some do-it-yourself work. I mean, you grind off a little bit of this scale here, and you should be able to get at the liner lock a lot easier, and then if you enlarge the finger choil here, you'd get the blade further away from your finger, and things would be a little bit better. And you'd get a better finger choil out of it, too. But the simple fact is that you shouldn't have to be doing that at $325, and this is a very frustrating, at least for me, near miss, because without those two issues, if this were done, if they made, the GM3.5 that fixed those two things, it would be a shining freaking gem. I would really, really like this knife. But unfortunately, those issues are there, and they are big, and they bug the crap out of me, which means that this guy is not only not a gem, but it's not something that's going to stick around in my collection, even though there is a lot of good here. And so, in a lot of ways, my reaction to this knife shows how lucky we are, because this is, like I said, more than anything, a great knife. It is 95% a great knife, just with these big show-stopping sorts of issues. But the competition at this point is so strong, with true perfection on the table and really, really close, available at great prices, that these kinds of stumbles can be very relevant rather than something you just put up with quietly. And so, final conclusion, I like this knife so damn much, and it has a lot going for it. And it remains proof that Giantmouse is doing great work and that the GM4 is going to be worth looking at. But you've got those two Achilles heels, and so you got to keep them in mind. You got to be willing to either fix them yourself or just put up with them. Maybe it's not a concern to you, in which case, great. Go for the knife. Because it is unique enough in shape or size that you should absolutely consider this guy if you're looking for a smaller, more gentlemanly sort of titanium flipper. Because if that's what you're after, I think this is standing out in the field, so to speak. And at that level, if you can put up with it, I think this mouse might yet be worth trapping. So there you go. Kind of a mixed bag. Well, no, it's not a mixed bag. It's a near freaking miss, and that's what bugs me more than anything. This could have been just off the freaking charts, but alas. Anyways, so I hope this has been interesting and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.